I just don't know how I can be expected to stand up and speak after something so extraordinarily peaceful, amazing. I will do it, though. I will do it. I may not talk much about peace, so I'm glad that you who came before me have talked about peace. Because there are things that we want. We want peace, we want prosperity, we want our health, that we, shall I say, there are things that we want even more than that. And I'll come to those things as time goes on. They're not all pretty because we are human beings. Let me read this from Conversations with God, book 3, Neil Donald Walsh. If all that you desired is what your soul desired, everything would be very simple. If you listen to the part of you which is pure spirit, and okay, if all of your decisions would be easy, well, let's see, if you listen to the part of you which is pure spirit, all of your decisions would be easy and the outcome joyous. That is because the choices of spirit are always the highest choices. Yet you are not only a spirit, you are a triune being made up of body, mind, and spirit. That is both the glory and the wonder of you. For you often make decisions and choices at all three levels simultaneously, and they by no means always coincide. It's not uncommon for our bodies to want one thing, our minds want another, and our spirits want another. And so there's conflict. There's conflict. We have wants that we may not have thought of lately. So what I did was, after I decided what I wanted to talk about, I decided to ask myself, what do I want? What do I want? So I kept asking myself what I want. And I came up with these amazing thoughts. We want to heal our bodies. We have great intentions to eat better and exercise more, and yet we're often unwilling to act in ways that could be the most helpful. So let's take a moment and a deep breath and forgive ourselves for not doing all those things that we know will help us. According to Abraham speaking through Esther Hicks, most of all, we want to feel good. And we think that eating chocolate, drinking a lot of coffee, these things make us feel good. And they do, of course they do, but they're very temporary. They're way too temporary. We want to love. We want to be loved. And it is said that we need to love ourselves first, and having a high regard for our own wants and needs, and not to sacrifice our own well-being for others. I love my family and my clients and you. And I feel more loved by this community than anyone outside this community than I ever have in my life. And I come here every weekend to be reminded, to remind myself of how loved I feel. Truly. It took me years to figure out that it would be a good idea for me to give what I wanted to receive in my life. And that didn't work so well, but I kept on giving because I trusted. And, but because of my family of origin and the way I was taught by the Catholic Church, it really took me a long time to realize that the love, the service, the caring attention, and self-expression was something that I did to remind myself of who I really was. And it took really a long time for me, years, to understand that the things I want, I give myself. I give myself through the grace of God, really. And it took me a long time. And I finally learned that in order to receive what I wanted, I had to give it, and I still give, and sometimes I get back what I like, and sometimes I don't, because it's always things always change, people change. People are not always the same, and we're not always the same. As I just read, we're a body, mind, and spirit, and we're acting at all three levels simultaneously, and the things we want are not necessarily lining up with each other. The things that I wanted seemed to be the ones that my family never gave me. And at the same time, it was difficult to receive because I was not thinking I was good enough to receive. And certainly now I do. The gift of love I was offered, I could not receive because my Catholic religion somehow taught me to be self-effacing and humble, and I thought it was to be a giver and not a receiver. And I thought it would be selfish to receive these things. And I know people, and that's who that's true for. We have a hard time knowing what we want because of all these different parts of our being that we want this and want that. And not getting together at the same time to give it to us, because we need to create it within our own being. And that's where spirit is very handy. That's where our angels, that's where our belief and guidance becomes very handy, because through our own understanding, through our own opening up to spirit, we can fill ourselves with those things that we need. So we spend time resenting our family of birth, and I've been guilty of this myself most of my life. And I've been listening to Gabor Mate and about trauma, childhood trauma. And I keep listening for something more positive. I believe that at a deep level, we choose our family in order to explore one way of being human and becoming spiritual. If you consider the idea of post-traumatic growth, the trouble we experienced in our families have actually helped to make us into the strong and resilient people that we have become. So look up post-traumatic growth. We hear a lot of post-traumatic stress, but there is information about post-traumatic growth. And I believe that one of the gifts of my family, although they didn't realize it, of course, was that I did have a hard time. It was very angry, and a very angry family, very emotional, and I was a very emotional youngster. And and I don't know if that was part of it, but I think that I somehow managed to become very defiant at a young age. And I have two younger siblings who suffered and still suffer much more than I suffer at the thought of my family trauma. I was able to use, I am still able to use the ideas that were awful in my family to recreate the life that I desire, that I am wanting for myself. And I guess I believe it's a lifelong process, because we don't learn things like that all at once. As we meditate, though, and as we continue to ask ourselves questions, we need to listen. We need to open up. So we want to forgive. We very much want to forgive, and we want to be forgiven. And that's where the family work especially comes in. We want to forgive our family, and it's takes a long time. Takes a long time. So I'm going to talk about myself a little bit, because I'm experiencing some physical pain that is another level of my learning, of my experience, of my willingness to just say, I can do this, I've got this. But physical pain is one thing that's hardest for me to understand, because it takes me to a place of feeling very poor me, and a place of feeling very vulnerable. Even my cancer treatment, although it was long and it was very uncomfortable, it was not painful. Most of the time it was not painful. So this is a new adventure. Pain is a new adventure for me with the arthritis in my right hip. So another thing we want is that we want the people around us to be more like us. We want, we would like to have less disagreements. We'd like things to go more peacefully. We want people to read our minds. We just don't want anything to go wrong. We don't want to be disturbed. But of course, that's not the kind of world we've chosen. And we continue to choose. Things go wrong. I wrecked my car. I got it fixed. It got delivered yesterday. I was rearranging things in the back of the car because they had been working on the front, and they moved everything in the back. So I was moving it back, and there I am looking at the back of my car, and there's a great big crack in the right quarter panel. It's about this long, right near the trunk. on the right side, and I know this problem is already solved. That's where I'm just trying to help myself a little and not be too angry and not be too frustrated. And I know that I don't know yet where to go with this, but it will resolve itself. Another thing that we want to do is defend our ego, and that and so I spent my childhood defending my ego, and it was okay. I mean, there was a lot of good things about my family. We had a lot of fun. We took some trips, a few, and I lived on a farm. I grew up on 20 acres. I grew up with hundreds and hundreds of acres that I could walk through, and it's how I found God in nature, and I still find God in nature. I find healing in nature, and it's it gives me a lot of joy. It gives me a lot of strength to feel my connection with nature, and you've heard about that in the past. So I'm amazed at how much I can argue with people close to me, and how sarcastic I can be. It's fabulous, you know. So I didn't think there would be anything funny about this talk, but there really is. There just has to be. So Ram Dass says, we are just walking each other home. He's talking about helping each other come home inside of ourselves. And it's truly what we're doing here in this community, what we've created and what we continue to create together is a process of helping each other walk home. And we do that with all of our relationships. And no matter what kind of relationship they are, they may be more difficult, and the more difficult ones are the ones that teach us the most. And one thing that we really do want to learn, we want to learn. We want to learn. We are curious creatures, and we want to learn. And we will continue doing that until we're gone from this world. And we will continue to be reminded of the inner work that we still have to do. So it seems our deepest desire is union with God, union with Spirit. We want that peace that we know we will find when we return to God. But I'm also aware that it's not absolutely necessary to die to experience it. Because there was a time, well, this was years ago in Santa Fe, and I had the most extraordinary experience of love that I had ever felt, and it was very short, and I'm not sure. I don't remember what I was doing, but I wasn't doing anything particular. I think I was just sitting. I was overwhelmed with this feeling of love, and I was almost afraid. I could feel the tiniest bit of fear that came with that overwhelming love that from Spirit through my spiritual self. It came into my heart and didn't last very long, but it helped me realize that that feeling of love is something that we have access to whenever it should happen to us. I think it's harder to think that we are going to achieve it just by wanting it, because it's not something that comes with our wanting. It just comes because it's who we are, and it's who Spirit is in our lives. It just comes. What do we really want? Keep asking, what do I want? You'll come up with even more ideas than I did. Just keep asking the question and keep listening. Asking is one thing, but listening for the answers are even, of course, it's even more important to listen. It's more important to listen. And that's, I don't know about you, but that's one of the hardest things for me to do. I can listen to the trees better than I can listen to, I can hear the trees communicating with me better than I can hear my spirit communicating with me. Of course, a unique remedy for our suffering is laughter. It shakes up our thoughts. It lifts us up. It releases us for a second, from a belief system that kept us in a negative space. So during any anxiety of any kind, we can choose laughter. We can listen. We can breathe. And especially we can let go of what we think must be true. Joseph Campbell says, "We are meant to go with joy among the sorrows of the world." And I wrote this down and kept it in a place where I would see it very often. Because the more I say it, the more it reveals to me how necessary it is to whoever you are and wherever you're going and whatever you're doing, you're meant to go with joy among the sorrows of the world. I love these words from Abraham through Esther Hicks. You never get it done. You never get it done, and you never get it wrong. And that's it. Now I'm looking forward to what you have to say.